You touched upon this sort of paradox of choice, that the amount of music that is out there that we have access to literally just at our fingertips on our phones is so great. In that environment, how do you see your role as sort of a reviewer?
Just really, I think, when people say that, oh, music reviewing isn't important or music discussion isn't important because we can just listen to A, B, C, or D without having to pay for it and so on and so forth, so therefore irrelevant. I mean, that just because the need for it doesn't hold to the same standards of what the need for it were in the 70s and 80s and 90s doesn't mean that there's still not a necessity or a demand for it today. It's just the demand is different. The demand instead is not to say, hey, this is what I think is worth your $5, $10, or $15. The demand is to say, well, I think this is worth your time. I think this is worth the time in your day to listen to, as opposed to a million other things. Not only by way of me saying, hey, this is good, but also by way of me saying, I've even taken the time to review this, because we were having a little discussion earlier than this. And one of the biggest issues for me week to week is not really, hey, how do you listen and review 5 albums in a week? It's the difficulty is really, when I review an album, what you're seeing me is pick one record of maybe 7 or 8 others that I could have reviewed instead. And there was certainly a time of kind of listening and decision to get to that point, and also to kind of take note of what are my fans asking me to review. What of these albums actually interests me and feel like would be a cool conversation or something to kind of spotlight or point out.
What's that process like? The process of selecting the albums that you ultimately
It's just,
review?
again, it's a mix of personal interest. It's a mix of what I see the reception is online for that particular record, what I sort of feel like that album is stylistically and contextually. Like, obviously, a few weeks ago I reviewed this strange album of obscure Latin music religious song from this band named Ocancolo, and obviously nobody was asking me to review that, and nobody watching me even knew what the fuck it was. But it sounded really great, and it was an amazing little experience, kind of an oasis, and it was certainly like a breath of fresh air from the trap or emo stuff that people are usually trying to like get me to cover. And not that that's not important to cover every once in a while. It is, because it's the zeitgeist and people are listening to it and it's trendy, but simultaneously I feel like it's important to kind of like throw something in there every once in a while to kind of like break it up and get people to see things a little differently, and that over the years, in my opinion, is what has created the most devotion to what I do. Not that I've had a good opinion on Kendrick Lamar's Damn. I'm sure you guys can give me that. Like
everybody's got one of
those.
I mean,
for anybody who shows up to a thing like this, I would like to think that you guys are probably among some of my most hardcore followers. And the things that people who meet me in person often say to me, and I think that my livelihood is based on people like you, is that, oh, you turned me on to this A, B, C, or D that I wouldn't have heard about otherwise. And I think that creates a devotion, because early on, I forget what the context of it was, but it was probably either shortly before or after Bob Boylan of NPR Music was telling me that I couldn't work at NPR Music. He was telling me that, hey, you know what, like, an interesting thing is people will forget what they heard, but they'll remember what they heard. They'll remember where they heard it. They'll remember the source of it. And they'll maintain a devotion to that thing, even if they end up losing the information that they originally gained from that source. And up until this point, I've sort of, that's borne out to be true, at least in my case. And again, those people who I do think kind of drive the engine behind what I do, the people who care about what I do the most, they're getting that out of what I do. It's not just simply me talking about what the most popular record is and giving the most palatable opinion of that record at that given time, because I don't think that that's the best way to leave an impression on people. I think giving people an entry into something that is totally fresh and new to them, even if not everybody takes to it, is a more interesting way of going about things, and giving people a perspective on something that they're already familiar with and have probably already heard a million opinions on. Giving people kind of pause on something, I think, is really important. Even if they don't end up agreeing with you, if you put them in a position where they actually have to think about whether or not they like it or dislike it because you've challenged that perspective, I think people tend to get more from. You know, even though there will always be a very loud minority of people online who are like, fuck you, you fucking asshole. You gave that the worst review, you dickhead. You fucking melon dickhead. You cunt, you fucking asshole. Even though there's always going to be people who do that, I think at least a vast majority of people who enjoy what I do appreciate that I've put them in a position where they can disagree with me and they can think about what it is we disagree over. And, you know, the point isn't to trick you into thinking what I think. The point is to get you to think about why you think what you think, you know? Like, think of a defense, think of like what it is that makes the album special to you. Because even if we both enjoy the same thing, you may enjoy it for totally different reasons than I do. And for me, that's what I would like to think the takeaway is for people who get it, you know? But I don't think there's just kind of one way to enjoy or consume my content, because you never really have anybody who creates content of any kind, whether it be YouTube videos, literature, or music. You know, people are going to enjoy what you make for different reasons. You know, people just enjoy what I do because they want to see the most negative reviews and just laugh at that and just kind of see me say some things that they think are really mean. You know, and that is what it is. You know, some people just want to have their opinions validated, but you know, I can't sort of decide what you take away from my videos. But I would like to think that there are some people out there consuming them in a way that I'm kind of intending it to be.